Okay, I'd like to welcome our guest today, Ryan Tate. How you doing, Ryan?
Good morning, guys. How are you, Maria? How are you, Rusty?
I'm
I'm
doing well.
fantastic.
It's Wednesday and we're getting closer to Friday, so excited about that.
And it's a special week this week too, right? Anybody want to guess what this week is?
Easter week?
Here's a hint. If you're watching on YouTube, here's a hint. Masters Week.
Yeah,
Masters Week.
for
Does
sure.
So
Easter usually fall on the same weekend as the Masters?
no, I don't think so, or else I would get in trouble anytime I've ever gone, probably. So, or maybe it does. I don't know. I've never been on Sunday. I can tell you that.
Well, happy Masters Week, everyone.
Ryan, have you ever been? Have you ever been to Augusta and to the Masters?
I haven't. Got some friends that have gone. Sean always talked about how awesome it was, but I never made it myself.
Oh, I bet being in the former turf business, I bet he was in heaven there. Seeing everything manicured so perfectly.
Yeah, he's a Georgia guy too, so it just worked out perfectly.
Oh man, well I've been a couple times, and I said this year I was going to take my son. He's Greer, he's 12, and he's all into golf now, and he's old enough where he can appreciate it. Years past, I'd say, "Hey, you want to go to the Masters?" And he'd just say no. And I'm like, "You have no idea what you're saying. Like people die to go to this event." And so I told him this year, I said, "All right, buddy, I think I'm going to take you for your birthday." And I called my older brother, Chad, said, "Hey, you want to go with, Greer and me? I'm going to surprise him for his birthday or whatever." And he's like, "Yeah, sure. Let's go Friday." The kids were out for Good Friday, and I got on StubHub and had a heart attack. It was going to be like $6,000 for three of us to go just for a Friday. So I think we may watch it on TV instead.
Better
Start
views
saving for
anywhere on
next
TV.
year. Yeah.
There you go. We do have, but something interesting. We do have our Monday after the Masters golf tournament that I've hosted with our other company and now Pruitt Pest Control for the last 2 years. And Maria, this is what, the fifth annual?
Oh, this is our sixth annual.
Sixth?
Yes.
Okay. Ryan, have you heard about the Monday after the Masters tournament we do?
I have, just because I follow you guys on social media and it's all over it. Because Maria does such an awesome job.
Thank you for that plug. Thank you very
That
much.
she does. She kills it. She kills it, man. And she does a great job along with the rest of our team getting us prepared for that. But that's something we've done for, I guess, this will be our 6th one. So it's always the Monday after the Masters, kind of a Masters themed deal. And we get to invite, a lot of people we network with in the community and the industry. And we raised, I think, $25,000 for the Bruce Pearl Foundation Outlive Cancer Initiative last year. And I believe we're on pace to beat that this year, right, Maria?
Yep, we're a little bit we're on pace right now. And of course we make a little bit more the day of too, but yeah, we're on pace. We've had a really good turnout this year. So we have a couple teams that they've been in it from the very beginning, and then we've had a lot of new teams that we have playing this year. So I'm excited to get to meet some new people, and hopefully they'll be returning next year. And I think it's becoming easier and kind of more legit. It's just a lot of people are asking me about it. I'm like, how'd you hear about it? So
We
yeah,
sold out last week, I guess, and then we've had to make up a few spots. But are you a golfer, Ryan?
Not really. I play because I have to, business wise, I'm that guy who likes to drive the cart and make jokes and make fun of himself because I'm not a very good golfer. So I still have a baseball swing. I think that's what I blame it on.
There you go.
Well, you'll have to come next year.
I think I have a baseball swing too, even though I don't play baseball. That's going to be my excuse if I can find that one. But hey, Ryan, we appreciate you, being with us today. Appreciate your time. I've gotten to know you for a little while now, and you actually were a guest speaker at Pico Fest, our annual planning retreat for our company, Pruitt Pest Control, back in, gosh, I guess it was just last month. It feels like it was a while ago, but you killed it. So why don't you give us a quick background of who you are and your journey to where you are now, because it seems like you got a pretty interesting background and pretty cool journey ahead of you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys having us. And speaking at Pico Fest was the highlight of my year so far. It was a lot of fun. Everybody was engaged, and I enjoy speaking on passion and what we talked about. So I appreciate that. I've been in the industry for 17 years now. Started in the industry as a bug guy, as a guy in a truck, doing pest control services. And every time I listen to a podcast, the joke is always, of course, I grew up wanting to be a bug guy. No, nobody does that, right? But my wife was getting ready to go into grad school, and we needed to put her through grad school. And I wasn't really good at going to college, so I quit and started being a bug man, because making $28,000 a year sounded like a whole lot of money to me. So we did that, and it was really the best decision I ever made. Worked for a smaller regional company here near Huntsville, Alabama, and worked in several different spots there. Was in sales, and then sales management, and then branch management. And then I was blessed to meet Sean Hollis, who's now the president of Wayne's, and he and Steven Splon and Eric Fry, the owners of Wayne's at the time, recruited me to come to Wayne's in 2014. And it was really, really game changing for me from a career standpoint, moving on to Wayne's. And from a culture, from a belief standpoint, I really aligned with what Wayne's was trying to do. Their people matter approach, the way they focused on being servant hearted. And I really just that resonated with me, and joined the Wayne's team. And I was able to do a lot of awesome stuff there at Wayne's. Wayne's in 2019 sold to Anticimex, but prior to that, I was a branch manager, and then was a regional sales leader at Wayne's. Then when Wayne's sold to Anticimex, I went back into a branch management role in the Huntsville Service Center, which at the time when I first arrived there was probably a $3 or $4 million service center, and today's probably 14 million. So
Wow.
we got to really grow that market, and really grow some people, and see people step into leadership roles there. And then the last role I had at Wayne's before I left in December was the vice president of operations role, working alongside Sean and Doug Patton and Trey Strickland to lead our northern region, which was basically the whole state of Tennessee and North Alabama for Wayne's. And left there in December, and joined Limevisor. And now Monica and I are consulting for pest control companies, working in the accounting and operational and sales side of things, helping small businesses in the pest control space grow. So that's kind of how we got to where we are today.
And that's pretty awesome. I talk about it all the time on this podcast, of course, being called The Journey. And we talk about the journey of all of our guests. And I love hearing the background, because I say it like I just sound like a broken record here, but there's no straight line, it seems like, to where most of our guests have gotten where they are. It's like, doors are opened or closed, or, they got into the pest control industry by accident, or just by necessity, or whatever. And it sounds like your story is no different. And now, you're out sort of on your own, consulting and helping other pest control owners, man. I know you've helped us a ton. I mean, it seems like that's in line with your giving personality.
Yeah, I think that early on, I was really blessed to be led by a bunch of servant-hearted folks who showed me that when it comes to leading, it's all about other people, not about yourself, and really pouring into other people. And C.S. Lewis said that humility is not about thinking less of yourself, but it's just about thinking of yourself less. And when you take that mindset, serving others just kind of comes natural.
That's awesome. Well, to give you a quick plug, so like I said, I've known Ryan for a little while now. And what I've been so impressed about you, Ryan, is when we talk about it, different aspects of the business, right? So if I say, hey, Ryan, what's your opinion on billing, or what's your opinion on culture, or I don't know, operationally, right? Like anything, products, it seems like you're super well versed in just about anything we've talked about. And maybe it's just because I am not well versed in any of it. So no, but I mean, you have such just a very practical perspective, which is super awesome when you're seeking for advice or mentorship. And you've helped me a ton. And I will say, at our annual retreat, when you spoke, and I want you to touch on here in a minute, about the topic you spoke on. And the reason is, for those who've not listened or aware of this, but we do an annual company retreat with all of our employees for, all locations. We have them in our office, and it's tough to pull off logistically, and it's going to be more challenging as we get bigger. We can't just take off the day as we get bigger, but your topic that you spoke on, you literally had every one of our team members on the edge of their seat, smiling, taking notes, fully engaged. I wish they had done that when I was up there speaking. I was probably putting them to sleep, but you killed it, man. The feedback that we got was really amazing. And I think it's because you spoke from a place of passion, and it probably just comes natural to you. So tell us about the topic that you spoke on and what that means to you. Because I think whether someone's in the pest control industry or any industry, they can take those principles and things you talked on and apply it immediately to their business.
For sure. Well, I mean, it was really cool to come in and be a part of Pico Fest, because I believe core values are really important. And so that's one of the first things I look for when I talk to a company is, what do they have core values? Are they organized? Are they on paper somewhere? Are they on the wall? And of course, when you walk into Pruitt, you see immediately that the core values are everywhere, right? They're over on the wall. They're in all the places. But I spoke on passion because that's the number one, right? That's where it starts. And so, for me, I think that passion is all about connecting with your why. A lot of people have seen Simon Sinek's TED Talks and videos and all that stuff where he talks about the why, and inspiring belief in your people and people believing in that higher mission is what makes people passionate. People aren't necessarily going to get passionate about killing bugs or growing grass, but I can get really passionate about serving people and protecting people's most valuable possessions and thinking about what a home means to somebody, that it's their safe place. It's the place that their family can come together and build memories. And so, connecting people to that higher purpose of, we're not just killing bugs, we're not just growing grass, but we're actually serving people and trying to make an impact on people's lives. That's something that I get really passionate about because I'm passionate about people. And so, with you guys or with any organization, especially in the service industry, when we build that why around people, I think it'll be easy to keep our people engaged and passionate about what they do. And we talked a little bit in there about, when the core values or mission statements, or when we're talking about passion, we've got to take all those things beyond just saying them into taking them to the place that we're actually living it and doing it. And we're not just talking about passion, but we're being passionate about our work and serving others and a focus on other people. And, that was one of the things that I learned early on at Wayne's, especially, was that culture matters. And that culture is all about inspiring belief in that higher purpose.
Dude, no doubt. And as you're talking, I was just Googling this phrase, because sometimes I butcher it. But you've heard this before. Culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? Every day, right? And you don't really know what that means until you really start focusing on the culture and building a culture. And culture is an intangible, right? So how have you built culture? Like, if someone, like, we've got a lot of listeners, probably from startups to someone who's working for a company, thinking about going out on their own, and they want, they keep hearing like culture. I need to build a culture, core values. And I know when I first started my insurance business, we did core values, but they didn't mean anything for years. We just did it because we thought we had to. So what is your experience, or what points of advice would you give someone who says, I believe in building culture and I believe I need to have core values, but I just don't know where to start, or how do I do it? What advice would you give based on your experience?
I think where people get messed up is we believe that culture is a list of words that are, like I said, are on a wall, or that are in a handbook somewhere, or that we brush over, and that's our culture and that's our core values and that's our mission. But really, your culture of your company comes down to the things that your leaders model and do every day and what are important to them. That's what builds the culture in an organization. So if we have a culture in an organization of leaders who are very selfish, very self-centered, and are all about just how things can benefit them or how they affect them, then you're going to have a selfish culture. You're going to have a culture that's all about me and not about others. If you have a culture that it's got a bunch of leaders who are servant-hearted, who are focused not on themselves, but on other people, that's the culture of your business. So although it's very important to put those core values on paper, it's more important to have alignment between those core values and our actions, because what we say versus what we do always speaks a lot louder than what we say. So I think really having the people in place, the right leaders in place that are gonna align with that core value. At Wayne's we called them OKGs. And Sean talked about that on the podcast when he did it with you. They're our kind of guys and our kind of gals. Alignment with your people and the principles and the core values and the culture of the organization is a lot more important than skill, or what Simon Sinek would call those hard skills of being able to sell or any of those things. That those soft skills, those people skills, the cultural alignment, I believe is very important, and we've got to hire that way. But I also say, going back to the quote that you said about culture eating strategy for breakfast, which I believe is totally true, but also something that I see people saying, there's a lot of organizations that are really good at execution, a lot of organizations that do a really good job of culture, and a lot of organizations that maybe are real strategic with what they do, and they think really highly, and they can work on things and build processes. But I really don't think it's any of those things individually. I think it's all three of those things. I think culture's, paramount. It's very important. Culture is all about inspiring that belief in your people, like we talked about. Secondly, strategy is very important. And if culture is about inspiring belief in your people, then strategy is about requiring higher thinking of your people, making your leaders, yourself, your leaders, and then your people, your team members, be lifelong learners, making them be readers, making them grow and learn things that challenge them and get them out of their comfort zone. And then lastly, execution. When it comes to execution, we've got to expect world-class results from ourselves first, but then also from all of our people, to have a high standard that we are trying to achieve and that we are holding ourselves accountable to. Those three things: culture connects to the why, strategy connects to the what, and execution, getting stuff done, connects to the how. If you don't have all three of those things, you're going to struggle and you're going to fall short as a business. But not just in business, as any kind of team. Great teams have all three of those things.
No doubt. Tell me about, I completely agree with everything you've said. And unfortunately, those are things that I've learned and you've learned probably through time. And as you get more wisdom and quite honestly, skinning your knees, right? Making mistakes, because you try to incorporate the culture, you try to do those things, and you think you've got the right guy or gal on your team. And then you realize, a month later or a year later, they're not the right guy or gal. Not again, because they're, some may be bad apples, but someone may not be a fit culturally for where you're going at the time of where your company is. Tell us some war stories, man. Share some war stories of how you've sort of implemented some of this, some stuff that's worked really well, and maybe some stuff you're like, man, this is where I made some mistakes. Because I think people really like to hear, the real in the trenches stuff. And I'm a big believer in that as well, man. Tell us about it.
Sure. Well, the first thing that comes up, my guys who I led at Wayne's would always mess with me about, hiring mistakes that you make along the way. Sometimes you got to fog the mirror test, can he or she fog a mirror? And if they can, let's hire them, right? And so I think I made a whole lot of mistakes at just trying to throw somebody in there out of necessity, because I just had to have somebody at the time, and rather than pre-planning and looking at things and looking 3, 6, 9 a year down the road, 3, 6, 9 months a year down the road, to planning so that you can take your time making those hires. And when we hire, out of necessity, because we got to have a guy today, we usually don't make as good of a decision as we would later on. And I think that's something that, you know, I learned over and over and over again, that you have to always be recruiting, always thinking about where your next team member's coming from, because if you're hiring out of necessity, you're going to end up hiring that guy or that gal that doesn't necessarily check all the boxes, because you just need to get work done. You just need to get out there and get Centricon stations in the ground, or get homes treated, or whatever the case may be. So I think that was one of the mistakes that I made early on, big time, was hiring out of necessity. And kind of a big picture umbrella over that, I think, is Scott Sutton, a guy who led me years ago, told me that in the pest control industry, too many leaders are firemen and not generals. And that really resonated with me early on in my leadership journey, that, you know, what does a fireman do? A fireman waits for a fire to pop up, and he runs out there and he puts that fire out as they pop up. What does a general do? A general is strategically looking over what's going on, and not just seeing what's happening right now, but he's seeing what could happen next. And he's trying to stay 3, 5, 10 steps ahead of what's happening in the moment, so that he has everybody in place before the issue comes up. And so as I grew and have grown and still growing in leadership and leading people and business efforts, I think that idea of being that general rather than that fireman has really served me well to kind of stay on the right path, and not hire or make other decisions out of necessity, but really be able to do it in a strategic, planned out way, because you're thinking a little higher, a little further down the road.
Absolutely. And how would you say you're able to kind of think in that big picture general mindset, particularly when you're a small business owner, and, you know, it's like, which fire am I going to put out today sometimes? And, you know, you hear the term, hey, you should be working on the business and not in the business. But there are times when all of us, whether we're in management for a company or we work for ourselves, we have to work in the business. You know, the goal is to one day maybe potentially remove yourself from the day-to-day, you know, tactical things. But what's your advice on that? Or what's your perspective on how do you take a step back and look at the big picture, as opposed to just caught up in all the details from a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things there. Number one, I mean, depending on the size of your business, the necessity of you being in it from the day to day is just a reality. Like you're saying, you've got to. I mean, if you've got 2 guys out in a truck and you're the owner / sales guy for your organization, you got to be in the field selling, right? I mean, you have to do that. So I think you just got to deal with those times, and you've got to set aside time from the beginning to say, I'm going to protect this time to work on the business, to do things that a CEO would do, a COO would do, and not allow myself to get caught up in, you know, the book, 4 Ds of execution would call the whirlwind of the day, right?
Right.
But then I think as your business grows, I think it comes down to trust, and not thinking that you can always do it better than the person that you hired. And you've got to hire good people, and you've got to trust those people to do their job. I'm not saying you don't verify. You absolutely verify that they're doing it. You hold them accountable. But when we hire people, we've got to trust them that if I hire Maria to handle the social media and the marketing, I need to stop making posts. I need to let Maria do that. If I hire a person to be a termite supervisor to lead the operations, I need to take a step back and allow that person to do it. And by doing that, you're going to free up time for yourself to begin to work on the business more and more and more. And if you don't work on the business, you're eventually your business growth is going to stop. I mean, there's going to be a threshold that you're going to hit. So you got to hire those good people, trust them to do the job that you've paid them to do, and then take that time that you were spending in the field and now allocate it to work on that business, just as you worked hard in the business, and don't feel bad about it. Work on the business. Know you're not out there sweating with the guy every day with that, like you were at one time. but know that it's just as important, if not more important, that you get there and you work on the business, kind of look at those big picture things and trust in those people to do their job.
Absolutely. Ryan, what are some, you work with a lot of different pest control owners or network and help, just, I would assume just kind of around the country, just through being a giving person and, whether it's mentoring or just sharing mastermind, sort of ideas and stuff. What do you see as one of the bigger challenges for a pest control operator or even a small business owner for that regard in today's environment?
Well, I think over the past couple years, we've all had this weight on our shoulders of inflation, right? I mean, we went through a time that it seemed like everything was so good, pre-COVID into the COVID years for the pest control and the service industry. From a financial standpoint, things were really, really good. Then the labor shortage happens and wages go through the roof. It's hard to hire people, and inflation really starts to hit our bottom line. And really have a lot of pest control owners that I talk to that kind of look around and they're bearing the weight of the shoulder, or bearing the weight of all those increases in their costs, and their profitability has started to shrink. And the one mistake I see us making over and over and over in the pest industry, especially with a smaller company, is we don't charge enough for our services. That's the one mistake that I see. And if you think about inflation, when inflation starts happening, the best weapon we have is our price. Mm-hmm. And we have to pass that along to our consumer. But we also got to remember that being reactionary to that is a lot harder to make a knee-jerk reaction that, oh, I've got to now raise my prices, versus having a steady approach to raise those prices or have that price point from the beginning where it needs to be, so that you've got room in there that when inflation happens, you're okay. But I would say that pricing is one of the things that we've got to do a better job of in the industry. I think too many of us think we're just bug guys, right? But our time is valuable, and we're protecting people's health. We're protecting people's homes. And what would the world look like if there weren't hundreds of thousands of people out there every day working on the front lines of pest control, killing bugs and keeping rodents out of people's houses? What would health do? What would that do to our healthcare system? What would that do to the health of our children? So I think we need to realize that what we do is super valuable, and we need to charge a little bit more for it, and all of us be a little bit more courageous on pricing. And I would say something that falls into that as well is thinking about your service schedule. As technology has developed through the early 2000s, the products that we use started lasting, instead of 30 days, they started lasting 90 days. And so a lot of people started going to a quarterly model. And when you do that, obviously there's some sustainability gains that you get from that, but really there's some good profitability gains you get from that as a company. And working on that service structure to maximize the service and the benefit to the customer, but minimizing the cost at the same time for you as the PCO, I think is a very important thing for us to look at. And when we're making decisions like that, I like to think of them, and I think I learned this from Stephen Spawn, the ex-owner of Wayne's, that you talk about making decisions on service schedules and pricing and all those things, and you've got to think about the 3 wins. And the 3 wins are: is it a win for the customer? Meaning, does it give us the ability to better serve the customer? Does it help the customer in some way? Does it give us the ability to spend more time with that customer, to use better products with that customer? So is it a win for them? 2, is it a win for the employee? Does the employee benefit from this change here? If he can go 4 times a year per house instead of 12 times a year per house, that means that he can produce more revenue for the business, meaning we have enough money left over on the bottom line to be able to pay that guy more. So it can be a win for the employee. And then lastly, thinking about things and making sure there's still a win for the company. Because you, as a business owner, you owe it to yourself, you owe it to your future generations in the business, you owe it to your family to make sure that you're protecting your bottom line, and every decision you make is also a win for the bottom line of the company as well.
Man, I could not agree with that more. And talking about the pricing, we, had an opportunity to be involved in something similar with another company, and their pricing was dramatically less than where the market was. And I think the mindset of this person was, well, I can do it cheaper, and I don't want to raise my prices on my customers, and they're good people, and but then you fast forward and you can't sustain your business that way, right? And as a business owner, you can't take all this risk and stress and wake up in the middle of the night. I mean, I woke up, 2 nights ago, I woke up in the middle of the night at 2 o'clock, just worried about something. And it happens often as a business owner, right? And to take that risk and have that stress, we're not saying you have to go out and be greedy, right? But you have to earn an equitable profit out there in order to be sustainable. And that's something that with our insurance business with Allstate, we don't control the prices. The prices are what they are. We have zero say over that. And with our pest control company, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because we can almost lower our price if we want to, which can be good or detrimental, or we can raise it. And having that hard line of like, here's our pricing, here's what we're charging, there's a reason for it, right? And it ties into the big picture of what we're trying to do. And we're struggling with that right now. Not struggling, but we're addressing that right now with some of our guys who just reduce our pricing, sort of discretionary. They don't see the big picture of not just how it impacts that one transaction, but the entire business and all of our team members. Is that something that you come across with working with different owners?
100%. And I think that, if I could snap my fingers and change the mindset of small business owners that I work with, it would be, and we've talked about this, Rusty, I believe more times than not always, more times than not, the marketing strategy and the pricing strategy for the smaller the business, the more it's focused on this is, I can be cheaper than Terminex. I can be cheaper than Orkin. I can be cheaper than Cooks. Because I am a small operator, I have a less overhead, and so I can be cheaper. I'm going to use that as my benefit. But if you think about other industries, if you think about clothing or whatever, if you go to a boutique store, on the town square somewhere to buy your clothes versus going to Belk to buy them in some big mall somewhere or whatever, you're going to pay more at that boutique because you're going to get a personal service, right? You're going to get a business owner standing there telling you, leading you in the right direction, helping you understand why those pair of jeans are better than the pair that you can buy somewhere else. And I think we need to take that same mindset that the smaller we are, we need to have that boutique mindset that because I'm a small business owner and because I own the business and you're getting service from me, or
Right.
I'm really close to you and you have access to me, that maybe my services should cost a little bit more than an Orkin or another company because I have a personal touch there. And I really think people are willing to pay that if we will deliver the value on it. So yeah, I think we just got to be all across the board more aggressive, and especially in the lesser, the smaller businesses in the pest control space, we got to be more aggressive at what we're charging for our services.
I agree. And I think a challenge, especially for me coming outside of the industry, not having, again, ability to control my own pricing and looking at cost of goods sold. And, I didn't have a lot of that experience prior to this industry. It's like knowing what my gross margins are, knowing what my material cost is, where should my material cost be as a percentage of my revenue and those things. I've had to learn that and been fortunate to be around a lot of good people who have educated me on that, and teams that I've worked with Limevisor. I mean, that's what you guys do, right? You work with and consult with companies looking at their bookkeeping, their fractional CFO, looking at their margins. I would argue that's probably one of the biggest challenges too, for number one, a startup for sure, but really most any pest control owner out there, whether they've been in the business or not, I would think more owners than not probably don't know their numbers as well as they probably should in order to make those decisions when it comes to pricing.
Yeah, I think that's very fair to say. And look, I'm a I'm entrepreneurial at heart. I like to sell. I've got a sales gear. And so me on my own, without having other people to help lead and guide me, I would be the guy who, if I hadn't had somebody sit me down and teach me that I need to be looking at certain things, I wouldn't look at those things. And so I think with small business owners, most of them were either technicians or salespeople for another company, and they start their pest control business. Very low barriers to entry in our business. You know, you get a truck, some supplies, a couple license, and a couple $1,000s in insurance, and you're on the truck and on the road and going, right? And so I think what happens is once we get out of that survival mode, we realize that we need to start thinking about how profitable is each service. And at Limevisor, that's our heart. I mean, when Monica started this, you know, Monica has been a CFO of a multi-million-dollar pest control company and done, you know, fractional CFO work and other things for all kinds of people in the pest control space. And her heart and her desire with starting Limevisor was to be the yin to the business owner's yang, you know, to be when the business owner was really good at selling or really good at servicing or maybe good at both the operational side, maybe they struggled with the accounting side. And we see that a lot. Being able to step in and be a third party that small business owner can hand those services off to and know they're going to be right, know they're going to get to them in a timely manner, and know that there's going to be some counsel and advice and some controller type info that you're going to get from Limevisor that's going to help you not only see what you need to see, but then also start working on what we need to do to correct that. Something else, Rusty, that we see a lot that I think we help people with a lot is just deciding which of your services are the most profitable and that you serve the best in, and doing those more, and figuring out what things you struggle to do and are least profitable, and let's do those less or not at all. I mean, that's a very simple, basic concept, but I think that's a mistake a lot of people are making. I think for Monica and I and Amanda and Nicole, the team at Limevisor, we want to help those companies to get better and be able to answer questions and give them clarity to their business that they've never had, so that they can go out and make decisions on pricing, make decisions on what they're going to spend on what products, make decisions on what service lines they're going to do or not do, or where they're going to spend their marketing dollars. That's a huge thing right now that people are. I met with a business last week who said, this service is very unprofitable and I'm spending my most marketing dollars on that. And like, my response is, stop, don't do that. You know, I mean, start spending that on something that's profitable, something that's going to make you a better return. So that's our heart. That's our desire to serve. And, you know, Monica and Nicole and Amanda do a great job of making sure that they can have those. We do full accounting services to the fractional CFO help. And then when it comes to leadership development help, operational help, sales help, that's more where I step in and say, okay, here are the things that you got going on. Now let's talk about how we're going to strategize on what needs to be done. And then how are we going to set up a plan and hold ourselves accountable to execute that plan?
Absolutely. And, you know, I think you hit the nail on the head again. You're hitting a lot of nails on the head, by the way, right? Like, you know, it's just so practical in theory, but it's tough to do, you know, as a small business owner sometimes. You know, again, where do I start? Like, I know I need to know my numbers. I know I need to, you know, have financials reported each month. And of course, it is a challenge, you know, when you're just getting started, because you are wearing a lot of hats, right? And I think I learned early on, Ryan, from mentors of mine, and, you know, they said, number one, track and measure everything. Track and measure, you know, your numbers, have a P&L, have a balance sheet, know your financials. And me not being an accounting major or that background, you know, is not my strong suit. You know, I had to absolutely get educated on that. And the other thing in our industry, and really with any, you know, within any industry as a small business owner, I think is knowing what is your cost per lead, what is your cost per sale. And if you can really whittle it down to that, I think it helps you from a marketing standpoint. So if I spend $5,000 on Google pay-per-click, and how many leads did I generate and how many ultimately became customers? If we can at least start there and tracking there, I think it already gives us sort of a foundation to build off of, right?
Yeah, I think that's a huge, and especially early on, because nobody has a job until somebody goes out and sells something, right? I mean, sales is how you get it started. Without a sale happening early on, especially, a business doesn't grow. I mean, a business doesn't exist without those sales. And so I think thinking of that, and one of the cheat codes, I call them, in the pest control industry that we have, is we sell multiple services that are very similar, right? People who want their homes protected for termites typically want their homes protected from ants, and typically want their yards protected from mosquitoes, and typically want their yards protected from weeds. So we have all these ancillary services a lot of times. And what I try to think about with that is, when I'm thinking about cost per lead, cost per sale, and driving that down, one of the biggest ways to do that is to cross sell, right? Because if you're closing 70% of your leads that come in that are termite leads, you're closing 70% of them, say, on termite, but then you can cross sell 30% of those services, then mosquito or lawn or pest control or whatever. Now we're at the place that our cost per lead, or our cost per sale, is now going down, because we're producing 2 sales out of that 1 lead, and those marketing dollars are now getting 2 times the mileage on them. And so we're, and for me, one of the things that I meant, me and William Booth would argue about this probably till the cows come home, but as an operator and a sales guy, I wanted to know, how many leads did I get you? How many dollars did you sell out of those leads? And then I would divide the dollars sold by the number of leads, and whatever our average sale price was for all of our services, I wanted you to average selling a service per lead that you got. Now, we all know that that doesn't mean you closed every customer, but if, Rusty calls and Maria calls for pest control, I don't sell anything to Maria because she's a tightwad, but Rusty will buy everything. So I sell him 2 services. And so I've basically, I've closed a lead on both of those people. Not necessarily I've closed 2 with Rusty, but I think once we realize how important cross sell can be, and asking for those other services, we can really drive that cost per sale and that cost per lead down. But very, very important metric to look at. And the last thing I would say on that part of, you're talking about metrics and what we need to be looking at early on, and even as you grow, you can kind of lose sight of this. Is pest control is won and lost in the truck. It's won and lost on a few key metrics. How much are you charging for your service? How much does that guy produce in a day? Can a guy goes out there and produces? So we control that by charging more for our services, cutting down on our windshield time by good scheduling and having nice, dense routes. So all growth isn't created equal. You need to hone into certain zip codes, certain neighborhoods, certain cities, and you need to build density. And when we don't build with density, we're going to miss out on a lot of that profitability. But you need to figure out what your gross margin is. And until you know what your gross margin is, you're going to struggle. And I always tell people, a 60% gross margin needs to be our goal. And with some of the newer companies, some of the, companies that are maybe doing triannual or biannual, or the door-to-door guys who are charging a little bit more for their services, a lot of those companies, you hear them talking about 70 or 75% gross margins on those businesses. And we really need to make sure that we're focusing on that gross margin and having it at least at 60%, so that we can aim for a 20% net profit. It's not always going to be possible. Some people are going to do a lot better than that, but those are the 2 metrics that I like to tell people to begin to chase, just in general conversation. Gross margin, chase the 60%. Net profit, let's chase a 20%, and then let's try to grow from there.
For sure, man. Again, knowing those statistics and those numbers, again, the resources are out there to find them. Again, I wasn't aware of what they were. I kind of had to swim upstream, I feel like, to find them. But once I did, you realize they're there. And that was just from like Google searches prior to starting the company. And then once I got in, it's actually getting connected with individuals like yourself and others who can share that advice. I had no idea what a 60% gross profit margin meant, right? And so once you learn, okay, that's a benchmark, and then how do I control that? How can I move that needle? I think is the next step of that. Ryan, as we wrap up, I love to ask this question. I don't think I've done it the last few episodes, but clearly you're forward thinking. You think about ways to improve the business, but where do you see the pest control industry going over the next 5 to 10 years? And I preface that by just talking about how technology has disrupted so many industries. Whether it be retail, whatever, right? You've got the cab industry getting disrupted by Uber, and where do you see the pest control industry going into the future? And what are ways that, the PCOs like myself, that are not the big boys out there, what do we need to be doing to prepare for that?
Well, two things I would say. Number one, consolidation is going to keep happening. That's going to be a reality that's just going to keep happening over the next decade that I see continuing to happen. But as far as technically inside the pest control industry, I think technology, you hit on it, is it. The digitization of pest control is here, and it's happening, and it's coming. And we have got to, as an industry, it could be the thing that really takes a lot of mom and pops out of the game, but it shouldn't be, because Corteva is coming up with things. All the rodent trap folks are coming out with the ability to sell you products that you can use to be able to digitally monitor insects, rodents. I think that digitization of the pest industry is what's coming next, and that's something that I was very proud and able to and excited to work on with Anticimex, as Anticimex has the smart equipment that they use and that they roll out with their smart pest. And I was a big part of doing that at Wayne's. And that's something that we've got to embrace in the industry. We can't ignore that. So I'm not telling you tomorrow you need to go out and start using digital traps in every service. But what I am telling you is you need to get to know those things. You need to start calling vendors. You need to start talking to the folks who are making these products and start getting to know what's going on in that space, because it's going to happen. And it's such a great tool, y'all, to be able to think about seeing things that we've never been able to see. We're at a house once a quarter or once a month for 30 minutes, where our experience with that customer and what we're seeing is very limited. But when we begin to use digital traps that are communicating back to us, telling us what's happening in real time, now we have true real-time 24/7 monitoring, and that is such a benefit for our customer. The idea is, if we have 24/7 monitoring, we know when a rodent gets into the attic, or when we know that a rodent's been into that station, or maybe we're able to see the data and then start to predict where that next rodent infestation is going to happen in some of these larger cities. That stuff is really, really exciting to think about. And so not only do we need to look at, starting to implement that, starting to learn about the digital part of pest control and how to use those sensors units, those camera units, those things to better serve our customers. But then we got to start talking about, what are we going to do with that data? Mm-hmm. Because if you think about Amazon is dominating the economy by data, by knowing what Rusty's going to buy next, Maria's going to buy next, what Ryan's going to buy next. And that wealth of data is giving them an awesome market position. So I think we've got a responsibility to collect that data, to understand the power of that data, and be able to organize and use that data in a way that better serves the customer. So I really think that's something that we've all got to start thinking about, especially the smaller companies, because your Anticimex, your Rentokil, your Orkins, all of those companies are pouring a lot of money into that, and they see that as the differentiator for them. We have to, as small business owners, jump in there and in the early 2000s, the bigger companies maybe adopted Centricon earlier or termite baiting, and then we kept smaller companies, we kept doing liquid, but then we came on board. I would say for us as smaller businesses, we need to come on board quicker when it comes to the digitization of the pest control industry.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's knowing where to turn to, right? Where would you turn to get that education?
I'd go to the folks that are manufacturing and making those products, and I would build industry relationships with people who work at Rentokil, people who work at Anticimex, people who work at Orkin, those companies that have access to some of those things. And I'd begin to network and understand that and know what's going on, and ask questions. It's the beautiful thing about the pest industry. Everybody says it on every podcast. We're pretty much an open book in the pest control industry, right? We share with each other, we care about each other, and that's because we're in a service industry and we're servant-hearted people, right? We show up and we serve. And so utilize that. Go talk to the branch manager for Anticimex in your market. If you're a branch manager, if you're a small business owner, go talk to the operational leaders at one of those companies and get that knowledge. And then, PCT magazine does a great job. PMP does a great job. Get online, go watch YouTube videos, go listen to podcasts, consume information as much as you can. And, it's all out there at our fingertips. We just got to go get it and have the desire and the passion to learn it. But industry friends and those manufacturers and those vendors is where I would turn to get that information.
For sure. And I think, resources in PMA, for example, having gone through their leadership program, it was a requirement to be at just about every event, which can be really challenging as a small business owner, right? It's much less a startup. But I know I personally learned a ton from the workshops and just being involved and getting the newsletter, and NPMA does such a phenomenal job. But as part of that, creating those networks like you referenced at those events, right? So when you're rubbing elbows with somebody at a lunch or on a break or during the sessions, right? Have you been to many of the NPMA events over the years?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And those are the best events to go. And what I see when I go there is I see people just trying to help one another, and the more outside, a lot of times we go to the events in our general area. What I would challenge you to do is, if you're in Birmingham, I challenge you to go to some of those events in Atlanta. If you're in Huntsville, go to some of those events in Montgomery. If you're in Nashville, go to some of those events in Knoxville or Memphis. And what you'll see is when you get outside of just your local sphere there, number one, you'll learn things that they're doing in other markets that you can bring to your market. But number two, people are just more willing to share. I think about all that I learned when we became a part of the Anticimex team. I think about things that Jim McHale said and taught me in the very little time I got to spend with Jim McHale with Anticimex. He said a lot of things and showed me a lot of things that made me go, wow, that's really cool. I think about Kevin Poland at American Pest and all the nights at Academy or whatever that we're sitting around having a steak or doing whatever, and he's just talking about things that they've gone through or issues, and people are open and go stick your hand out, meet them, be vulnerable, and ask for their help. And in the pest industry, you're going to find more people than not that are willing to help and share. Last thing I would say on that, I read a book our previous owner at Wayne's made us read. It's called The Richest Man in Babylon. And one of the lessons in that book of The Richest Man in Babylon is when you're wanting advice about something, kind of don't go to the stone mill guy if you've got gold questions. Don't go to the real estate investor if you're wanting to know about pest control. Don't go to the pest control guy if you're wanting to know about real estate investment. Go to somebody who's doing what you want to do and start to ask questions, and begin to go to the expert because they're out there, and make sure that if you're asking them a question about service schedule, they're experts in service schedule. For
sure. Well, you continue to share your story and you help others. I mean, I know I'm sort of being repetitive here, but you've really helped us. You've helped me. I'm sure you've helped others along the way, and in turn, I think that's helping you along your journey. And I can't thank you enough for all that you do, for being with us today. I know you're busy, and got a lot going on, which is exciting. Definitely want to keep in touch and get some updates as you move into the future. With with your journey and wherever that's taken you. So Maria, any closing thoughts here? I know you were a big fan of Mr. Ryan Tate at Pico Fest this year.
No, I just think that it's listening to you talk about culture, and you talk about pricing, you talk about cross-selling. It really all comes down to culture, and it comes down to your people believing in what you're selling, and not necessarily selling, but just being someone who is an avenue, someone willing to help. And it really all connects, and it all boils down to culture. So I'm leaving with a lot of I wrote down a lot of notes, so it's always rewarding getting to talk to you, and I, as always, appreciate your time.
No, thank you guys. I love the few times that I've been to come out, hang out with you guys at Pruitt, and it's been awesome. It's been an honor, and thank you guys for having me on here.
Absolutely. Well, look, go get some golf clubs, work on your golf skills, get ready. Monday after the Masters next year, you're going to be a guest, and we're going to enjoy it, man. But thanks again for your time, and I appreciate you coming on, man.
All right, guys. You guys have a great week.
All right.
Bye.
Take care.
See ya.